All right, this is another audience participation. So break out the rod and reel.
The story of Frank Allison is a story that every local community probably knows. It's the singer-songwriter from your area who never got a chance to be heard nationally, whose work was so good that if he'd had that moment of exposure, you could easily imagine breaking as a national artist.
Success for a band, really ought to be whether the music they made is something they're proud of, and whether they were able to create a scene at any level, whether it be local, regional, national. And Frank Allison and the Odd Sox certainly created a scene here in Ann Arbor.
They touched so many people.
For a lot of people that went to the University of Michigan through those years, I mean, he's like the soundtrack. He is the soundtrack to their college years.
Good, clean fun. It sounds a little cheesy, but it really was,
He would record in his closet at home. He would make recordings in his closet because he couldn't be too loud for his neighbors and for the girl he was living with at the time. So he had to be quiet, so he'd close himself off, and these are the recordings I was listening to, and they were magical.
I mean, there were a few people who were like frighteningly loyal, who would follow us. You'd show up at gigs 3 hours away and see every show.
People had moves.
They had dance steps worked out,
songs.
yeah. They had dance steps worked out for like Cash for My Car, and the cops are out, or the rain falls down, or the rain's out.
There were
the
Frank
cops aren't out.
dances.
There were, little,
do you remember those?
Yeah, little things. Things worked out, choreographed things.
And where you're supposed to shout a certain thing at the right time.
Let's go fishing.
Let's go fishing!
The response from the crowd is just...
It transcended the numbers of people who were there. It really did. It sounds kooky, and it wasn't just something done in production. It really was nuts. I mean, it was hilarious how into it everyone, and we would get. I mean, we all got wrapped up. It was so much of a mutual experience between the crowd and us. It was so intimate. We kind of just touched one another.
What that element was that made it wildly popular. If we understood what that was, we could bottle it and make a mint. But clearly, the audience, they knew all the words to all the songs. Which the first time I saw, I'm going, what the hell is that?
He was such a romantic songwriter, pining for some girl, and just sweet little love songs.
And I want
The energy of the place just sort of took you and transported you, and Frank was sort of the Pied Piper of the whole thing.
Now one of them's a fish with a fish lip smile and a bug-eyed look above.
You look around and everybody's bouncing up and down together, and I do think the band and the crowd fed off each other, and it was just a lot of energy, a lot of just fun,
Ow, ow. My head is light and the orange sky's bright up above.
Huge energy coming from the crowd, just wild. And I just remember sweating and dancing like nonstop, and people all around in this big crowd pulsating. It was just, that was a blast.
Now one of them's a lad, as a matter of fact, he thinks that he's the
I don't think Frank's stage persona was much different than his real life, amplified a little bit. This is stagecraft. You exaggerate everything because you're at the end of the room and you need to make it bigger for people to see. But Frank off stage was just as goofy as Frank on stage.
He's got a super zoom?
Yeah.
Hey, can you use it on me?
I just did.
Oh, very good. He's a happy dude here. One more guy here before we go down and play.
Primarily we sold them mail order and word of mouth and sold them off of the stage. And they were fine supplemental income.
In a way, we were really stupid about how we chose to market ourselves, if indeed we were going to market ourselves. And we were kind of wedged in between, like, are we genuine or are we marketing ourselves?
It seemed to me that there were different points at which hopes were really high for the band, particularly after that review of Monkey Business came out in the New York Times. And then they went to Russia, and there were different times where we really felt like, wow, this band's going to break out, and for those of us who loved the band, we couldn't figure out why they hadn't already. They were, the band had something really special.
He deserved wider recognition, but was trapped in his local region.
The further we got out of town, the worse it got. We stiffed in Cleveland every time. Cleveland was terrible. Toledo was worse. I remember one gig in Toledo where we got mercy ruled. It's Cleveland. A gig in Cleveland where we got mercy ruled after one set because the one bar patron had passed out on the table and the bartender and the waitress wanted to go home.
Look at this money. 30 bucks, 20 bucks, 30 bucks, 46 bucks. $5 opening for Bootsy at Alvin's. We made $5. Come on.
It's a hard business. How do you achieve success in the music business? And it has a lot to do with looking good and knowing the right people, unfortunately. And we neither looked good nor knew anybody, so maybe that was our problem.
And we would go back and forth, and we would have attempts, like we went to Star Search tryout, where we're gonna slick up and be a professional band.
We didn't really want to be on Star Search.
We did that thing, and it's a stupid
because we didn't know. We thought it could be a stepping stone.
Right,
you never know.
Right.
I think it really helped to make us not take ourselves too terribly seriously. This was not a rock band where everybody would be, primping in the mirror before you get up on stage.
I think part of what made us genuine was, we were there primarily to play music and have fun.
It didn't matter how many people were in the crowd at that time. We just knew we had something.
If I can sit and make my kids laugh with some stupid song, I've accomplished the same thing as if I've made hundreds of thousands of people laugh in some giant stadium. It's really the same thing.
Is it, who you know and luck, and I don't know what things had to happen, but I always wondered about that. It never made sense to me why they didn't make it bigger,
As far as why they didn't break big, they're big to me.